I'd like to welcome you to Kativik's Cycle 1 Science program. At KativikIlisarniliriniq, our approach and the education system has been tailored to accommodate the reality of life and Inuit culture here in Nunavik. As previously described, for secondary, the grade levels have been expanded by one additional year. Level 1.0 is intended to give our second language students extra time to experience science concepts and practices in secondary. The KI Science rotational programs for Cycle 1 and Cycle 2 follow the same content and the competencies of the Quebec Education Program for secondary science. Competency 1 seeks answers or solutions to scientific or technological problems is worth 40% of a student's mark. This is the practical component, the experiments and results that students obtain. Competency 2 makes the most of knowledge of science and technology is worth 60% of a student's mark. This is the theoretical component of the program. Competency 3 is communicating in the languages used in science and technology. This is not directly evaluated as a competency. In the KI programs, we use the MEAS competencies 1 and 2 in both Cycle 1 and Cycle 2. Competency 1 and Competency 2 are evaluated using the same criteria as the Quebec Education Program. Competency 3, however, has been replaced in our KI programs by essential knowledge. At KativikIlisarniliriniq, we have rotational science programs for both Secondary Cycle 1 and Cycle 2. Since many of our schools have multi-level classes, teaching multiple levels of science and managing several experiments simultaneously would not only be logistically challenging, but very unsafe as well. So, a 3-year rotational system was put in place to accommodate this reality. Blocks A, B, and C for Cycle 1 of secondary, levels 1.0, 1.1, and 1.2, includes the content from the Ministry Cycle 1 Science Program for Secondary 1 and 2. Blocks D, E, and F for the KI Cycle 2 of secondary, levels 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, includes the content from the Ministry Secondary 3 program and for the Secondary 4 Science and Technology course. In our KI rotational system, progression of learning is developed within each yearly block of the rotation, rather than by level or by year. Certain Quebec Ministry Science topics are grouped together in specific blocks so that the content expected from the Ministry program for each cycle is covered. Within each cycle of the rotation, all students, regardless of level in the cycle, learn the same content at the same time. This makes teaching science in a multi-grade class very straightforward. Regardless of what order a student follows the blocks, by the end of the rotation, every student in the cycle will have seen all the contents of the program for that cycle. Like the Quebec Education Program, we use learning and evaluation situations, or LESs, that develop competencies through a situation that targets one or more of the subject-specific competencies. In Cycle 1, several LES situations are grouped together in a commonly themed booklet where a number of scientific concepts come together to construct and evaluate the competencies. Here in Block A, students will learn about simple machines and technical analysis through Inuit tools. Then matter, atomic structure, and the periodic table. Next, the water cycle. And finally, technical drawing and design. In Block B of the cycle, students will discover cell structure and functions. Next, mixtures, solutions, and separation techniques. Then, plant structure, reproduction, and adaptations. After that, states of matter and density. And finally, mountain formation, erosion, wind, and earthquakes. In this school year, you'll be following Block C of the Cycle 1 rotation. Here, the focus will be on Arctic fruits and populations. Next, characteristic properties. Then human reproduction. After that, the rock cycle, soil and mapping. And finally, the 4 spheres. In particular, atmosphere, hydrosphere, and the lithosphere.